Hello everybody and welcome to the first round of the WSL NASCAR series here from Daytona. 80 laps in front of us here tonight at this historic race circuit. This time we're in the darkness as opposed to 1 week ago where we had a fantastic race ending up with Sean Campbell taking the victory after 50 laps in the daytime. It's wonderful to be here. My name is Ewan O'Leary. I'll be alongside Jack Oliphant for this broadcast, and David Christie is going to be behind the cameras once again. Jack, it's great to be alongside you. Thoroughly looking forward to this. We had a fantastic time 1 week ago. It was a great race, and this time we're in the darkness, going for a little bit longer, and of course this time there are points on the line as well.
There are points on the line, but I hope there's been lessons learned. So if we start looking backwards, only 11 of the entire field actually finished on the lead lap, and considering we've got 30 more laps to go on this week, as I said, I'm hoping a little bit more conservative from a few people. And at the end of the day, it is all a learning curve for a lot of these drivers. You're right though, round one is a go tonight, and there's a big championship on the line, plenty of prizes as well. We'll get all into that in a couple of minutes' time, of course. But Ewan, obviously you weren't here at the pre-qualifying. I know you've caught up on the race, and I'm sure you'll be as excited as I am.
Yeah, absolutely. Very excited indeed to get this one underway. Before we go any further, a big thank you to SIM3D, of course, and Go for the Gap as well for getting behind this series. It's wonderful to have them both on board. And, of course, this broadcast is brought to you by Absolute Sim Racing. I hope you all enjoy. A big thanks to everybody who is tuned in here tonight as well. Just to explain what is going to happen, the race, of course, is going to get underway in about 10 minutes' time, just under, because qualifying is just getting underway right now. Each of these drivers will have a little bit of time to get out there on their own this time, rather than in a big group, which some will be thankful for, I'm sure. And then we'll get into our 80-lap race here in around about 10 minutes' time. But qualifying currently underway here. Not the most important qualifying we're going to see all season long. I think that's pretty safe to say. It's a bit of a lottery, so it's just as well that it's not that important around here. But even though I say it's not very important, I still wouldn't ideally not like to be in the bottom half, or at the very least in the middle of all of this, because it is going to be chaotic, as we've already learned from last week's race.
Yeah, absolutely. It's you want to be within the top 3 or 5 purely to try and avoid any major incidents that might happen for people trying to get a little bit too gung-ho too early. It's a long game, and there's a big amount of strategy involved in NASCAR, which, as I said, is one of the points that we learned last week. And very much looking forward to seeing how people have necessarily taken on board all of that, or whether they take it on board at all. But you're right, qualifying, not massively important. It's not the be-all and end-all, but it is something you sort of want to have on your CV. Get out there, make sure you put in a solid lap, try and make yourself representable, and see what happens. As you can see in the timings, they are very, very close. There's pretty much nothing in it, as per usual in NASCAR. Only about 100th of a second between each and every position. Maynard's stand is 200ths of a second between 3rd and 4th, and that looks like a pretty big chasm, to be honest, compared to the rest of the field.
Absolutely, it's very close, as you would imagine, between all these guys. Although Olivia Hayward just going to the front at the moment there after that lap time there. So good lap time, 49.91 as opposed to the 49.92 by Matthew Heatrick, who's in second place at the moment. Then it's Thomas Fisher and Brody Maynard, although Mark Redford's just slotted himself into 4th place. So that is a strong opening lap from him, and he's still got one to go here, so could well vault himself onto the front row, or maybe even further. Here he is in the 77, and then a little bit further down we have Kevin Stammen, 6 Fitzpatrick, Judith Cooper, Gerard Wareham, and Matthew Bruno rounding out to your top 10 for the moment. All of those separated by less than a tenth of a second, which is exactly what we want to see as we go on board and up towards the line. At the moment with Jonathan Havey, you can see there on the dash, the number 43 car heading towards and over the stripe now through the tribal. Havey managing to get himself into 18th position at the moment with just about half of this qualifying session completed. But most of these guys, it has to be said, have set their lap times now, and you can only do 2 lap times. So most of these guys have done it at this point. Olivia Hayward looks like going to be on pole, but Daniel Valk, just as I say that, has gone to the pole himself, and that's quite a lap time there, 400ths of a second quicker than the rest.
Yeah, actually, that looks like a pretty stonking time from Daniel Valken. Like we mentioned a couple of times, I don't think it will particularly mean much as soon as we get about 5 laps into the race, because of course the slipstream will take over. However, like I said before, it's nice to have on the CV, it's nice to be on pole position, especially as you get the race underway and there's that opportunity to maybe get a jump or so on a few of the drivers, get a car length between you and the other drivers. We saw quite a lot of differing strategies on the high line and the low line as well, so if you're wondering what the high line and low line are, you'll see it in about 5 minutes time as we get racing. But normally in NASCAR, obviously they're pretty much side by side from the entirety and pretty much 2 by 2 all the way down the grid. If there's 40 cars, you'll probably see 2 by 2 for 20 rows. A lot like they're just doing a formation lap a lot of the time. However, with these new cars, DJ last week did make the observation that the side drafting is not as big a deal here anymore in iRacing, and you don't quite get the draft assistance if you're side by side with another car. So that makes it a little bit more awkward. When you go on that high line, which obviously in theory should be slower, you don't quite get the draft to enable you to run side by side as much. So almost the inside line was running 5 cars ahead of the outside at one point. But you'll see what I mean, and as I said, in about 5 minutes time. But just another thing for these drivers to have to think about. We should have a strong 27 car grid here, Ewan, but however, 3 of the cars have decided not to qualify.
Yeah, that looks to be the case. Loris Muller, Isaac Rain and Mark Cudmore all look like they've decided not to qualify. Isaac Rain actually had a really quite good time of things in the pre-qualifying race that we saw happen last week. Finished 8th in the end, but very much had a chance of getting up towards the front and winning that race quite possibly, but wasn't quite able to do it. Just on your point about the side drafting and so on, and you know the lack of speed for these cars when they are going side by side, this is going to become more apparent as we come through the season, particularly Las Vegas next week, which is one of those circuits that these days in the new era of NASCAR, more downforce on these cars more than ever before. It does mean that side by side racing can split groups apart, and then it can be difficult to bridge between groups. So that's going to be apparent in a week's time. We go to Charlotte after that as well, another 1.5 mile circuit where that is going to be very apparent. Richmond, our only short track on the schedule, is going to be next for round 4. Then we've got California ahead of Pocono. The Tricky Triangle comes at round 6. The penultimate round is at Homestead for once, not the final one. The penultimate round at Homestead, and Talladega to round off the season, bookending the season with super speedways, those lottery tracks like Daytona and Talladega starting and ending this season, just to add an extra sense of unpredictability ahead of this championship.
Another sense of occasion as well on the start and the end, I suppose. And when you get into NASCAR racing, oval racing in general, I should say, actually, those are the 2 tracks really that spring to mind instantly, aren't they? Talladega made notably famous over here on this side of the pond anyway by obviously the Will Ferrell movie, mostly from my opinion anyway, and obviously Daytona, which I think you won't find a single motorsport fan in the world who hasn't at least heard of Daytona. So yeah, those definitely are the pinnacles, and it's good that we're starting and ending the season with them. However, Pocono is a little favourite of mine as well. I just love how the tyre degradation does become a big factor there. It comes in a little bit more strategy. It's a little bit tighter as well. It really separates the best from the worst drivers, although the worst drivers aren't exactly that bad. Right, we're going to go. Qualifying is finished now. Remember, they had 10 minutes. They could fit 2 laps in at any point during that 10 minutes. And they did do quite early on, a lot of these drivers. It saw Daniel Valk sit on pole position alongside Olivia Hayward, Matthew Heatrick and Thomas Fisher, 3rd and 4th, Mark Redford and Brody Maynard, 5th and 6th, Kevin Stam and Suarez Fitzpatrick in 7th and 8th, Judith Cooper, 9th, Gerard Wareham in 10th. Matthew Bruno and Jamie Martin are 11th and 12th. 13th down sees Sean Campbell, Brandon Hughes, Harry Wills, Jeff Browning, Artie Boschart, Dion Neuveld, Jonathan Havey and Dean Timms rounding out the top 20. And then Dylan Kinch, Marcellus Bruning, Ben Smith, and Rich Matthews, 20th to 24th. And last but not least, Loris Muller, Isaac Rain, and Mark Cudmore, all without setting a lap time. And just before we get into the race, Ewan, I sort of made the small point earlier last week that some drivers actually choose not to set a lap time on purpose to try and separate themselves from the pack and let the carnage unfold ahead of them.
Yeah, absolutely. It might not turn out to be that bad of an idea. We'll see how the opening laps go. But yeah, you're absolutely right. Some of these guys choose not to. I have a bit of a feeling that Isaac Rain might be one of them because he was doing very well last week, and it would be a surprise to see him especially as well considering this is the first round of the season. There's probably not any penalties that mean you can't qualify, if you see what I mean. So yes, you might be right on that one with the choosing of non-qualifying. We roll off though out of the pit lane, out for one pace lap here in the darkness. This time, as opposed to in the daytime, it's about 10 o'clock in Sim at the moment, as it is in the UK, 11 o'clock in Central Europe as well right now, and it's going to be a very, very good race indeed. I can't imagine that it's going to be too much different to last week's race. Hopefully it entertains in the same way, but the darkness around here, it really doesn't make much of a difference compared to some of the more endurance races that you might see in the iRacing calendar over a calendar year, where the darkness really does play into effect. And this is one of those events where it really doesn't.
Yeah, absolutely, and I'm not sure if the overheating, the heat of the track will really make that much difference as well, because tyre degradation isn't really a thing around Daytona. We learned that last week, but it's a bit longer race. That's probably the biggest difference that these drivers are going to have to face here today.
Certainly is. These guys running down the back straight towards 3 and 4 before getting into the tri-oval and getting our season underway. It's going to be Daniel Valk in control of the field. Olivia Hayward is going to be alongside him, trying to get the jump here and trying to get that outside line working, because it really didn't until about the final 10 laps when people really did start to get organised, and then you can start to fly. But in these early moments, not expecting it to go too far. The inside line, and those on the inside line, like Valk, Heatrick, and also Redford, who are lined up 1, 2 and 3 on the inside there, should be in a good place. The pace car pulls into the pit lane, and we are ready to go racing in the WSL NASCAR Series EU. We're ready to go. Daniel Valk in control of the field. He hits the gas and he immediately gets a jump over the outside line. Hayward, not a great reaction on the outside there, but nicely formed up at the moment, just trying to get alongside those leaders. But it's Valk and Heatrick who have really got themselves connected well on the inside line there. We go racing into 1 and 2 for the first time, 80 laps ahead of us at Daytona. And it's a nice stop from everybody, especially from the inside line, which begins to show itself early on.
Brodie Maynard made a fantastic move, and we're going to see this a lot. We're going to see the different strategies and the timings and spatial awareness about drivers going from high to low line. But Daniel Valk has just absolutely blitzed away, and I think caught a lot of drivers by surprise, and I think a lot of drivers are being a lot more cautious than they were last week. But that ability that Valk had to jump, I think Heatrick went with him, obviously, but then Brodie Maynard, who got stuck a little bit on the outside, who weren't quite as quick, saw an opportunity, saw the fact that there was a massive gap on the inside, slotted into it, and look at that, already jumping 3 or 4 positions just instantly off the bat. So really good start by Brodie, has to be said. Daniel Valk, it's going to be difficult to upset him at the moment, but to be honest, if I was anybody on this circuit right now, I wouldn't be that bothered. What we're essentially, Brodie Maynard flicking in and out of existence, that's always a little bit worrying.
Certainly is. Let's hope that it evens itself out throughout the next couple of moments, and we can get that car back into existence permanently. That'd be nice as we go through 3 and 4 here on the second lap. Not expecting the similar things that we saw last week. Only 50 laps, of course, at the pre-qualifying race here at Daytona 7 days ago. And we're getting a little bit of a calmer start, although after the initial inside line doing very well, we're starting to see a few people jump to the outside and maybe have a go here. If you do get organised out there, then you can overhaul those on the preferable line, but it is difficult, and we didn't really see it until, as I said earlier, the final 10 laps of the last race. Here's Matthew Heatrick in control at the moment in that Toyota Camry, just pushing Valk to glory right now. It's not going to stay like this forever, but as you said a minute ago, it's a great idea to do it for the moment. You can even save that little bit of fuel as well by not pushing the air out of the way for everybody else.
Well, that's the thing that these drivers need to think about now, thanks to the fact that obviously it's a longer race. Probably some people are hoping it'll be a cleaner race as well, and therefore strategy might actually come into it a little bit more. And if you are hunkered up behind someone, the way that iRacing works with its fuel management system is the fact that it doesn't really matter what revs you're doing like a normal car. It actually matters on where the throttle pedal is in conjunction, well, basically where it is. If it's on 100%, you'll be using a maximum amount of fuel all the time. If it's on 95%, you could still be hitting the rev limiter, but you'll be saving 5% of fuel per lap. So you really do need to use the slipstream and maybe try and save some fuel. There's a lot of laps, there's a lot of opportunity to save 5% of fuel a lap, basically. So that might mean you go an extra lap or two into the race and you can just splash and dash effectively. You have a shorter pit stop, shorter refueling section, and therefore save a vital 10 seconds potentially in the pit lane if done correctly. But that is granted without the fact that we might have a pace car at some point.
Absolutely. Those cautions are going to decide this race, arguably. It's going to change the face of this race, there's no doubt about that. There are 22 cars currently in that leading group. 4 of the others are here, currently being headed by the 61 of Marcellus Bruning, who's currently out at the front. The 63 just behind is Isaac Rain, who might not be too disappointed to be back here, because obviously not going to be getting caught up in any incidents back there, you'd hope. Dion Neusveld and Rich Matthews also the other two. Joining that little quartet of drivers. Then we've got Mark Cudmore, a further 10 seconds back. Not entirely sure how he's found himself quite so far back, but he has done. He's running around on his own in dead last at the moment. He'll be hoping he doesn't get swept up. However, I should say. However, he does have a chance to get back into the race, of course, because of the lucky dogs you talked about last week here. You can get back around if you're the first car on the lead lap.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm a big fan of the Lucky Dog. I think it adds a fantastic spectacle. Second chances, which isn't that part of the American dream? Isn't that what they always talk about? A country of second chances and all that sort of thing. The Lucky Dog is the epitome of it in terms of motorsport. As you mentioned, if you are a lap down and then the safety car comes out, or pace car, I should say, due to a caution period, then you do get the opportunity to unlap yourself, join onto the back of the grid, and well, we all know what NASCAR is like. You just saw it last week. You have that opportunity, even if you're 20th, as long as you're on the lead lap, you've got a chance of getting into the top 10, top 5, even winning it. There's always hope in NASCAR, which is one of the reasons why it's a brilliant form of motorsport. A lot of people might shun it because it's just turning left constantly, but those people haven't studied it, they haven't watched it thoroughly enough, they probably only ever saw it on a YouTube video or something like that. Well, sit down and watch it in real life or even on the sim. There's an awful lot more to it.
Certainly is. As we scale back through some of these guys, Matthew Bruno's found himself on the apron for some reason. He's driving through the grass. Not entirely sure what's happened to him. He must have got into some kind of squirrely moment by the looks of things. Just a little bit, the rear end stepping out from under him by the looks of things, and he's lost the train. Somebody in the wall at the exit of 4 there as well. So a few of these guys starting to lose control of their cars just a little bit. Some duck back to the inside line again for that little bit of safety, maybe. But there are no places to hide around Daytona. There's nowhere to go if incidents start happening in front of you, as we've seen indeed in the past. But these moments can happen at any time, and I think Bruno, more than anything, actually is pulling to the inside line there just to stay out of trouble. He'd rather do that than get involved in a big incident. This is exactly what happened. He's the 24 car in the middle of all this with the green nose, you can see in the midst of everything there. What happens here? Just pulls off.
Yeah, that's very odd, isn't it? I'm not entirely sure what's happened there. Maybe he's just doesn't feel comfortable in the mid-pack. Maybe he missed a gear or something. Hardware issue. Very strange, but the positive is it hasn't caused the caution period. I believe when I last covered NASCAR on iRacing, I think you do need to have 2 cars off the track at any one time to cause a caution period. So it could be a really small incident, like i.e. Bruno going off then if somebody else had done it around him. Even if there was no contact or anything, we may well have ended up with a caution period. So I'm not sure if iRacing's tweaked that a little bit, but we actually do have 2 drivers off the road. But at the moment, no caution period, which is proving me wrong, which I'm quite happy about, to be honest, because we don't want them. Dean Timms and Dylan Kinch. And your guess is as good as mine there, Ewan. I'm sure Dave Christie, the wonderful broadcaster he is, will be able to find out what happened. And right on cue.
Yeah, here we go. What did go on in the back of the pack here? Somebody losing the rear end. Difficult to see but somebody lost it. The 31 and the 46 both finding themselves on the inside line there. And one of them was in the barriers as well. Just briefly, you can see some scratch marks down the side of the 31. Let's have a bit of an on-board, shall we? Just was that a losing of the rear end, or was that contact? Difficult to tell from this angle, of course, but it looked like to me that Dean Timms just lost the rear end, and that's a big shame for him. He was running very well last week, ended up in 5th position, but he was one of those who very well could have won the race on another day.
Yeah, to me it looked like, we saw quite a few onboards last week where there was contact that initiated the back end stepping out. That one to me did just look like he'd lost it on exit, and there is an awful... Wow, there's a car going slowly as well. I think that was actually Dylan Kinch actually getting overtaken and being lapped, which is sensible by him, just staying off the road, so well done to him for that. But what was I saying? Oh, yes, these cars do have an awful lot of power, I think north of 800 horsepower. Not a lot of weight, and obviously rear-wheel drive, so with the undulations of a NASCAR circuit, even like one that is quite steady like Daytona, I mean, just look at the banking that these drivers are going up. They're not on full throttle all the time, and if they power full throttle on just a touch early before they exit, before the weight of the car becomes very light, if you put full throttle on as the car goes light, basically as they're going onto the straight, the rear wheels could end up spinning up, and they could end up, as he said, as you just saw with Dean Timms, just losing the rear end and going off. So yeah, there's more technicality to these drivers, to these cars than you think. 80 to 100% throttle is a big amount of horsepower in these NASCARs.
It certainly is. There's a lot of horsepower on board. Just to explain the whole caution thing, by the way, I believe we saw 5 of them in 50 laps last week. It is manually done by race control. Normally, you don't see this in a NASCAR series, but deciding to switch things up a little bit here at World Series Leagues, we're manually throwing them out. So I think normally, would that last incident have caused a caution? Quite possibly, if it was the iRacing system itself deciding what warrants a caution. But since nobody, or since there wasn't a mass pile-up, and we can continue on like we are doing right now without major problems, race control deciding that it is not worth stopping everybody and then going again here with the caution. So yes, we're still green flag racing. It's thrown by race control, so we'll see when / if that happens.
Oh no!
And it might do just now, because of the big crash on the back straight involving the leaders, the 2 on the front row both getting involved in it, and everybody behind is forced to clatter into them. Oh dearie me, this is going to see big changes in this race, because so many cars were involved in that.
There were too many cars to even pick out, to be honest. Brodie Maynard, I was about to say, did a fantastic job, actually. They've moved, whilst we were talking about everything else in the first 14 laps, there was quite a bit of movement, and the high line started to get a little bit more of an advantage and was starting to form a little bit of a comeback, you could say, led by, I believe it was Brodie Maynard at that point. Now, there's going to be an awful lot to dissect here, but this is the first caution period of the day.
It certainly is. I think it all starts on the outside line there, possibly with the 96 pushing whoever was leading at the time. And then everybody gets involved. The 34 was the first car to get spun around. And I believe it was by Matthew Heatrick who was pushing that car. Deary me, this is absolutely unbelievable. Swaz Fitzpatrick, by the way, was the first driver to make their way through without problems. And so leading right now, there it is. There's not a lot you can do in the pack right here when you are on the outside line there. You know that in that 92 car, you got nowhere to go, and then everybody behind, nowhere to go. We very rarely see the big one at Daytona so early on, but we're seeing it here, and it is going to change the face of this race. There are so many damaged cars trundling around at the moment.
Yeah, there's not just trundling around, though. Swaz Fitzpatrick, Brodie Maynard, Olivia Hayward, and Thomas Fisher, they're all jumping into the pits. Basically, everybody in the top 10 that actually survived that crash, and probably actually everybody who was involved in the crash as well, I imagine. They're all jumping into the pits. Now, we do have fast repairs here at the WSL NASCAR European League. I believe they get 2 fast repairs, which is only fair, really, because crashes do appear more often than you'd hope. So Ben Smith, who I don't believe has taken the pit lane, and Dion Neuveld, who hasn't taken the pit lane either, are currently first and second. Fitzpatrick has come back out. She's up to 3rd position now. Sean Campbell, winner of last week, actually. And I was going to say that, they qualified in 12th position this time round. Maybe not quite where we wanted to be, but up to 4th place now due to the fact that half the grid has crashed. So all of a sudden, rip up everything you saw in qualifying, rip up everything you saw in the first 15 laps, and refocus, because it's basically a new race.
It basically is at this stage. As you mentioned, Beth Smith now leading, ahead of Dion Nieuwsveld, and then we've got those who came into the pit lane. Interesting to see a disparity as well between those who did come in. So Fitzpatrick, Campbell, Fisher and Hughes all with 7 or 8 second pit stops. Olivia Hayward's pit stop was double that. So there's just definitely a disparity there. Tyres possibly being taken on, and I'd be surprised about that if I'm quite honest. We're not even a quarter of the way through the race yet, but some of these guys might be taking tyres, like Hayward, Boschjot, Wareham, Rain, all possibly have taken tyres in this one. At a circuit like Daytona, I would be a bit surprised at that. But then again, these cars look like they were getting a little bit out of shape already.
I'd be surprised if they meant to do it. What I will say is the fact that I have raced quite a bit on iRacing, and I'm forever forgetting to unclick the new tyre option, because the tyres are an automatic give me that you have to opt out of tyres when you come into the pit lane. So they'll automatically be put on you unless you click the option before you get into the pit lane, which is pretty difficult to do when you're driving around at 200 kilometers an hour. I think you can do it when you're on the starting line, but there is an opportunity where some drivers will have just forgotten because maybe they weren't planning on coming in this early, and it's taken them a little bit by surprise. But what I will say was there was a long time under pace car. There was an entire lap, which was about 1 minute and 20 seconds, where they could have unclicked it. So, yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if they did it out of a mistake. What I would be surprised is, agreeing with you here, Ewan, if they took it out of choice.
Yeah, I would be surprised as well, but each to their own. We are moments away from going racing again here at the end of lap 16. This is Daniel Valk, the first man to get spun around in all of that. He's back out there again in 17th position, as you mentioned earlier, still on the lead lap. We are ready to go back racing in about half a lap time. Are we going to see a bit of a quieter time of things through the next stint of the race or not? Is that going to have put a few people off? That's the question here, really, because we did see some quite manic racing there. Although Matthew Heatrick's push on the back of Valk there was not particularly scandalous. I wouldn't have said. It was not particularly bad at all, but it did still cause a fairly big incident where a lot of cars got damaged there. Does that mean everybody decides to take things a little bit more cautiously over the next few laps? Let's wait and see then as we come to complete lap number 16. 64 laps still to go here at Daytona in the first round of the WSL NASCAR Series EU. We get ready to go racing. It's Ben Smith this time in control of the field ahead of Dion Nieuwsveld as they go over the start-finish line and through the trioval once more. The three of Smith leads the field away on the inside line and takes an early lead over the rest at the moment, getting pushed by Fitzpatrick and Campbell at the moment as well. We're racing once more, and we'll see if it's a bit calmer than it was at last time going forward in the next stint of this race.
Yeah, to be fair, they did 13 laps, all very well and good, but we all know, everybody watches motorsport, knows that a safety car breeds safety car, or pace car, I should say. I keep making that mistake. Nieuwsveld into first place. However, what I'm quite impressed with is Campbell in sort of dicing for second. Not quite having it all his own way, but you can see the 26 car, the sort of dark blue and black machine, having to struggle on that high line yet again. So after what was a good start, again, we're seeing that high line maybe just dropping back a touch as the inside line starts to push to try and get an early advantage. But Nieuwsveld leading the way for the moment. Smith, then Fitzpatrick, Fisher. Oh, and there's another safety car period that's going to come underway. Ewan, you may have seen a little bit more of that than I did because I was focusing right at the front, but there seems to be a whole lot of cars involved again.
Yeah, more cars involved, I'm afraid. I bet some of these cars involved in their second incident of the evening already, I'm afraid, in the first quarter of this race. It all started, somebody, I think, got turned into the wall there on the left-hand side, and the top 9 were able to get away. It comes at about 10th position in this train. Let's see who tips who as we just come out through the trioval. This is the entry to the trioval. And on the exit is where things are going to start to go wrong. What happens here? If you look up a little bit to the black and orange car there, tries to is that the 8 car quite possibly? Trying to read numbers here, but the black and yellow one either way gets knocked into the wall. The 31 by the looks of things did the spinning around, or quite possibly. Well, who knows? But somebody from the outside line trying to come to the inside, causing this one. This is what we talked about earlier on, the inside line being favourable, and so those on the outside want to get in, but you've got to wait for a clear bit of track space, and when you don't, this is exactly what happens.
Yeah, I think I touched on this last week, but it's a lack of spatial awareness, really, that can really hurt these drivers and all the drivers around them. And yeah, it's just a big move over to the left. I mean, it looks like it was an intentional movement over to try and get onto that low line. Sometimes the high line, the drivers can be spat out. We saw Dean Timms spit out from the outside just because they put their foot down a little bit too hard, but it did look like an actual intentional sort of attempt to get onto that lower line, which just was misjudged in the end. There is a bit of a problem. Let's have a look. I'm trying to find. This is Dylan Kinch, sorry, who's already been in the wars. Let's face it, Ewan, as well earlier on. Like you said, some of these drivers being involved in potentially their second incident. I don't think Kinch was actually hit early on when we saw him going very slowly within the first 10 laps, but I wasn't sure whether he actually got involved in the first big pace car event. Now, Neuveld and Ben Smith, both of whom hadn't come into the pits in the first stint, have now come into the pits on the second caution period. So whatever strategy they were going for, they've decided to bail out of it somewhat and come into the pits, although they'll probably have a quicker time of it than the drivers coming in just behind them. Brody Maynard, I think, is in the pits. No, in fact, Brody actually looks like potentially unlapping themselves. Neuveld, Smith, Bruno, Stam, Broining, Isaac Rain, they're all in the pit lane now. So basically everyone outside the top 10.
Absolutely. It's worth it if you're a little bit further down the order, but also if you're outside the top 10, you are likely to have damage at this stage, to be fair. So that might be playing into things as well. But yeah, Neuveld and also Ben Smith, who stayed out under the first caution, probably a good idea for them to come in, really, because I think if they'd have stayed out much longer, they would have had to pit under green, and that is even worse in a race like this one. Hopefully we do get to run long enough to have some green flag pit stops. I hope so anyway, but it may not happen after all. But we'll just have to wait and see, really, what transpires as we look at Loris Muller here, and in the wars as well, by the looks of things. No front end to that 68 car whatsoever. So that's going to have to be another pit stop here for that team, I'm afraid. And Lewis already, I'm afraid, one lap down in this race. So not over, as I said earlier, not over by any stretch of the imagination, but certainly set back as Fitzpatrick retakes the lead of this race. Once again, after being first out of the pit lane under the first caution, now first out on the racetrack as well, as we ready ourselves for another green flag run in maybe 1 lap's time. But yes, this field reshuffled once more, and already this field reduced to less than 20 on the lead lap.
Yeah, I was actually looking at Loris Muller there, and I don't think this is what's happened to them. But sometimes when you only have 2 fast repairs and you're within the first half of the race or something, sometimes you don't want to have to use them all straight away, sort of thing. And if the damage is minor, you might just live with it until later in the race when you think, okay, it's worth fixing it now. It's unlikely to be a big incident later on. But Loris Muller's car was basically in half, so I don't think that can really be potentially the reason why. But yeah, we'll never know. In fact, Loris Muller has actually come into the pits. Some of these drivers have been in 3 times. Rich Matthews has been in 3 times. Isaac Rain's been in 3 times. I know we're about to get started, but finally Matthew Bruno has been in 3 times as well. So not really been ideal for a whole host of these drivers, but fingers crossed this one we can go for potentially another 15 laps maybe without an incident. That would be delightful.
It would indeed. 19 cars on the lead lap here at the moment, and unfortunately 5 drivers in the pit lane right now having pit stops that are probably going to go on for more than 1 minute, I'm afraid. So we are already seeing the attrition rate beginning to take effect, already only a quarter of our way into this race. It's all, of course, about picking up points as well here in this championship, 8-race championship. And 40 points up for grabs for the race winner, then 38 for second, and that's 1 all the way down to, well, a long way down, at 39th, which we're not going to get down to here today, obviously. So, yeah, there's not many, it's a point of position, basically, as it is in real life. NASCAR makes the maths very easy for us, going to keep the championship very close as well, and very much worth looking out for. throughout this season. But it's round 1 at Daytona. Who is going to take the opening win of the season? Well, we're under 60 laps away from finding out. George Fitzpatrick is going to get us underway once more in this number 7 car. A good reaction, well, almost a too good of a reaction from Fisher on the outside line there. Thomas Fisher retakes the lead very early on. Did he go before Fitzpatrick? Quite possibly. Don't know, but they've certainly got the lead as well as Sean Campbell. It's all single file out front, but that was almost too good from Fisher there. We'll have to have another look at that.
I was going to say, this is where we realistically need DJ Clark back in the booth, doesn't it? Because I'm not sure if you can do that. I don't know if it's like GT racing.
Well, you can on the very start of the race. The leader has to take the green flag first on the in normal NASCAR rules. Under a restart, you can take the lead as the car in second place on the outside line. However, if you go before the leader has gone, then before the green flag has gone, then that must be illegal. So I don't really know. We'll have to see what transpires out of that. But Fisher's got the lead either way, and this is the most single file we've seen all day, as we've got our third caution of the day. Something going on a little bit further down. Looks like Hughes and Cudmore might be involved with it as cars scatter to avoid them.
Yeah, well, as I mentioned, unfortunately, at the end of the first caution period, safety cars breed safety cars. It doesn't matter what form of motorsport, they just do. So what's happened here, then, they are relatively spread out, to be honest, Ewan. I'd be surprised if there was any big sort of nasties from this one. So number 33 and 66 going side by side. Oh, and the number 66 comes back across onto the 33, and that's Brandon Hughes has been turned into by the number 66, which is not appearing for some reason. I can't find it. Can you find the number 66? 86, that'll be the reason why. It's Mark Cudmore, of course it is, because you mentioned it right at the start, Ewan. So, yeah, Mark Cudmore just looking like they came across Brandon Hughes, and in a very similar incident that we saw for the second caution, just a lack of spatial awareness, effectively.
Yeah, this one to me is especially silly because there was never a gap in between these two cars, and you only have to wait one more car to slot into line here. So this for me is quite silly from Cudmore, but there we are, going for a very spectacular accident, which is enough to make you feel sick, isn't it? Goodness me. There we are. Thankfully, nobody else collecting those two, because as you said, it's a bit more spaced out. But yes, that's another caution, I'm afraid. And it's this time Thomas Fisher who is leading us around. A bit of an update, by the way, on a couple of guys who are already either in the pit lane or out of this race, or what is going on. Hearing from Isaac Rain in the YouTube chat, saying that they were talking about pre-qualifying and how he came close. There, he's currently in 15th position and on the lead lap, importantly, which is good. Judith Cooper as well, waiting for the 8-minute repairs to finish for her, and she can get back out there again soon, hopefully. She's nearly 7 minutes into those right now, in 24th position, and so hopefully we'll be able to get out there once more. As I mentioned the points a few moments ago here, very important to just pick up points, and so getting back out there, whether you've got 8-minute repairs or not, very important to get back out there.
Absolutely, yeah. There's plenty of opportunities for practice, essentially, for a lot of these drivers, because obviously there's a championship, 7 more rounds after this. If you can get the practice around Daytona, try and learn from a few mistakes, whether it's yours or other people's, you still always need to be aware, and you might as well get out there. You paid your money, you might as well race, sort of thing. Since we've got this caution period, we might as well talk about the prizes that these drivers are going to be going for. Of course, we've spoken about the championship. Well, and we've also mentioned our sponsors going for the Gap and SIM3D for this particular prize pool. And well, I can tell you that SIM3D, they've thrown everything at it. To be honest, it's a brilliant set of prizes. So if you win the championship overall, first place prize will be awarded to the overall winner of the series, and they'll get a SIM3D Rumble kit and 2-seat Rumble motors. So another addition to anybody's sim rig, essentially, is the Rumble kit created by SIM3D. And essentially, if you go over if you lock your brakes, or you go over any kind of rumble strip or anything like that, you'll get a vibration through the brake pedal, which will sort of almost act as a more realistic measure of what you've just been feeling. And there is a video out there done by our friend Chaz Draycott, who's done a review of it as well. And by all accounts, I've commentated with Chaz. They were pretty damn good. So that's a fantastic prize. P2, you get a SIM3D LED gear indicator box. Fantastic bit of kit. Looks about 15 LEDs high and 15 wide, and essentially you can tell it to flash up yellow when there's a yellow flag, flash up red when there's a red flag. You can tell it to put your miles per hour on. Basically anything you want to be put on LED, it'll do it for you, which is pretty cool as well. And last but not least, this might help a few drivers out there who haven't unclicked their tyre option. You get a SIM3D button box for P3, which you can basically hotkey to tell iRacing to do certain things, i.e. not take tyres, take fuel, X, Y, Z sort of thing. So another good bit of kit by SIM3D. Big thanks to them.
Yeah, absolutely. A big thanks to both of our sponsors here, SIM3D and Go for the Gap, in this WSL NASCAR series. Good to have them on board. And yeah, that's what these guys are competing for over 8 weeks of this championship season. Of course, next week, Las Vegas. Make sure you join us, same time, same place. Make sure you join us later as well, by the way, because we've got the US version of this championship running a little bit later on. I think it's maybe starts in about 3 or 4 hours time. Don't quote me on it, but stick around after the race, and yeah, we'll get that to you. And it's going to be a very good race, like this one is turning into as well. We've still got 18 cars on the lead lap. Brody Maynard was the driver allowed to whip around the field and get back onto the lead lap as the lucky dog. And so we have 18 cars, as I mentioned, on the lead lap once more. They're all lined up 2 by 2. And we're still 54 laps away from the end here at Daytona. 3 cautions so far, 3 in very quick succession as well. Are we going to see these guys finally get themselves into order and get a green flag run going here in this race? We come through the trioval once more, up towards the stripe, and Thomas Fisher, this time on the inside line, is going to get a bit of a taste of his own medicine by the looks of things, because Sean Campbell giving him a run for his money on the outside line there. It's Jonathan Havey pushing Campbell to the front at the moment by the looks of things, as the outside line gets off a little bit better than the inside. But who can form up the best? Who can form up the quickest? And who is going to get their nose in front? Fisher versus Campbell. Coming out of 1 and 2 at the moment as they go down the back straight. Campbell looks like he's got the legs at the moment.
Yeah, Campbell, experienced now, running at the front of the field. He did it all for all of one lap, last time out, obviously taking the victory. And now this is where he's thinking about that spatial awareness. I think there was potentially about half a second where he could have moved over and got in front of Fisher, but it wasn't worth it, and he decided to stay on that high line, even though it means that he's potentially going to lose out on the position a little bit further down the line. But he wants to stay in contention. He doesn't want to cause a wreck again. So Campbell getting pushed along the way by Havey, Jonathan Havey, who we're on board with now, trying to get Campbell onto that inside line and probably trying to follow him through as well. There should be no touching under any circumstances as they go into one of the corners. But as they come off the corner and into the straight, it's all fair game, and a little bit of a push down the road sometimes is very nice to have. And Campbell takes the lead. Havey goes to the inside and takes second place. Velk, who qualified on pole position, of course, has managed to fight their way back up after that first caution incident and is up into the top 3.
Absolutely, we saw that there how organised the outside line were. Very, very good indeed. But Havey saw that the inside had more help coming and they were going to suddenly power on past. And so if they wanted to stay in front here with Campbell, he was going to have to duck down to the inside line in front of Fisher. That's exactly what Havey did. Campbell had to follow, and now we've got the leaders on the inside line once again, with Daniel Valk trying to push himself back to the lead again, this time on the outside line. He's got help from the free of Ben Smith, who's recovered from his pit stop a minute ago. That was risky. A little bit further down, those on the outside trying to duck to the inside and only just about making it. 3 cars on the outside 9 now. Look at how many there are on the inside. They are going to get steamrolled by the looks of things.
Yeah, the top 3 are getting a little bit of a breakaway. Now, they're not going to enjoy that breakaway for too long because this is NASCAR racing, but it does give them a little bit of respite. It gives the whole, oh my days, I thought there wasn't, our camera position, I didn't think there was going to be any room for those sort of midfield cars to go in. But again, they've found the opportunity to go in, and they've blended in nicely with the inside lines. So as long as there's no pushing around the corners here at Daytona for the foreseeable future, and they're all in single file, we might actually get into a little bit of a rhythm in this race, and maybe some drivers can start thinking about when they're going to take fuel, how much fuel they're going to need to take, whether the tyres are going off, which we don't expect they will do. But just basically calm down and reassess the strategy, because after each caution period, it is effectively like restarting it is restarting the race, but we're starting a brand new race altogether, because most of the time there's a completely different pole sitter, there's a completely different top five, and you've got to, all of a sudden, the plan that you had from the position you had originally goes out the window, and you've got to completely reassess it. So fingers crossed, all in a single file line, we can actually have a bit of clean racing, a little bit of strategy coming into play, Ewan.
Absolutely, we love to see it. The strategy going to come into effect here. Lap 14 was when the top 7 came in here. Lap 9 for Dean Timms. But yeah, these guys have been running out there for a fair amount of time now. 17 laps on this stint at the moment. Not entirely sure when these guys are expected to pit, because in the pre-qualifying race we didn't actually get to the end of a green flag run before these guys had a caution, and so they could come in then, as that's a very sad looking NASCAR on the outside line there. I think that's Muller again, getting lapped for the 3rd time today. I think it is indeed. But yeah, the top 15, 16 cars this is at the moment, running out front, all single file. The strategy is going to come into effect. Let's not forget these fuel tanks have been limited to 67% of their capacity, which is 2/3 for those counting at home. And they should be coming in a normal stint with 100% capacity. I would expect 40 laps plus. So that's quite hard maths. But towards the 30, at the back end of the 20s, towards 30 laps, is where I'd expect these guys to be. So at least 10 laps before we end up seeing pit stops. The question really is, are we going to get to that mark without a caution?
I'm glad you did those maths, because I couldn't figure that one out in my head. Yeah, no, very glad you're here, Ewan. That's the big question. Obviously, we all have our fingers crossed. But at the end of the day, we're powerless. It's only the drivers that are out there that can actually do anything about it. Campbell and Havey, again, really running strong. Campbell's going hard now, though, isn't he? I mean, very much got the pace down. Clearly confident in the car, that the balance is good through the corners as well, because we saw him really push forward and take that lead, and obviously hasn't really stopped. And a lot of the other cars, I wouldn't say, are struggling to keep up, but what I would say is potentially with the slipstream, I wouldn't have thought he would pull away quite as much as he has, or be as unopposed as he has been. So Campbell driving very well, but driving very hard. Maybe he's using a lot of fuel and potentially churning up his tyres as well. We're not 100% sure, obviously, because we haven't had a pretty much full race distance yet for any of these cars. If you thought your favourite driver's day was going from bad to worse, well, if you're a fan of Gerard Wareham, you probably got the worst look out of everybody, because he blew his engine and had 25 minutes worth of repairs. Unfortunately for Gerard Wareham, there he is, having a not very interesting race, but actually following along on the YouTube chat, which is where we love to have a little catch-up with some of our drivers. So, Gerard, unfortunate in Cornwall. Unfortunate that you're obviously not out there racing, but thank you very much for the update.
Yes, still currently 17 minutes through those repairs, so hopefully see him out again soon. We've also got Brandon Hughes, Archie Bushard in the pit lane. Jeff Browning, while we were on board there, just left the pit lane after 15 minutes. Or something similar to that effect. So, yes, some big repairs going on. And our first retirement of the day as well. Dylan Kinch is currently down there in 27th and will be staying there, as he will not be finishing this race, having only completed 17 laps today and no longer repairing that car. He is out, I'm afraid to say, as this front group continues to just decrease in size. We've still got 15 attached, but Kevin Stubb and Brody Maynard are currently running around together right now, and are a little bit detached from this field. Saw a bit detached on the outside, on the back of the field a couple of moments ago for about 4 others as well. But it looks like they've got reattached. I presume it's the back 4: Bruno, Rain, Matthews, and Wills, all who got off the back. And indeed, some people deciding the outside line might be a good call here. They're clearly tired of this single file parade, and some people want to make a difference. It's going to be very, very difficult to get something going, though, in the first half of this race.
Yeah, I think it's Dean Timms who's currently sort of running around the outside of a few of these drivers and swapping with Daniel Valk consistently. As Valk, very much... No, that wasn't Valk, actually, who moved to the outside. I think that was Heatrick just in front of Valk right now, and I'm not sure Heatrick actually meant to do it. I think he...
Ooh.
Oh, no, there we go. He is meaning to do it. He does want to go for that high line. Now, the problem, Ewan, with being the first driver in that high line is the fact that you're in this lovely slipstream. You get this loads of overspeed. You got an opportunity where you think, you know what, I can actually have a go at these drivers in front. You go out to the outside line, and all of a sudden you're hit with a wall of air, and all of a sudden you slow down by 3 miles an hour or 3 kilometers an hour. Now we're starting to see a few drivers think to take that risk. And here goes Campbell, Sean Campbell, actually trying to cover that one off. And I think because Loris Muller is maybe up ahead of them, I'm not 100% sure. I think Campbell is literally just fending them off here. He just went defensive as this is the back of Loris Muller's car.
Oh dear, and there's a contact and there's a caution. Deary me, this is why we tend to say, this is why lap cars tend to stay up towards the top because they don't want to get involved in stuff like this. But unfortunately, we have seen an incident there. Everybody tried to go round the outside of Muller, but weren't able to do so without getting into contact. Bruning and Valk are both involved. I'm afraid Valk with his second incident of the day after being right up towards the front. It's Sean Campbell who's managed to hold on to the lead here. He was able to get around without too many major problems. But for everybody else behind, it was a little bit less lucky. Let's have a look at how it started, though. This is the outside line with Matthew Heatrick, by the looks of things, trying to get something going. And in a matter of corners, he was able to, in a matter of a lap or so, he was able to get something going. This is the lap previous to him. You know, he's sort of thinking about it at this point. And here he is now. He's starting to think, yeah, I might have a go at this. And then in about a lap's time, all hell breaks loose. But you can just see how quickly momentum can shift in one of these groups. Because this right now looks like we're going absolutely nowhere. And then in one lap's time, all hell's going to break loose.
Heatrick was probably doing the NASCAR equivalent of weaving there, really, though, to block off a few drivers, wasn't it? Now we actually watch it and study it. Heatrick must have gone out and in and out and in about 4 times there. It's coming up now, though. He's going to the outside. A few other drivers are starting to think about it. Now, I said Campbell, I think, was defending the attack from the outside as he saw everybody going that way. But I'm not sure whether he was trying to just maybe avoid Loris Muller, unfortunately. But we're going to have a look. Now, Muller is right there in the middle. And then, yeah, there we go. So Valk almost ran too close to him. He went too wide, too late. Clipped, potentially, one of the cars. It might have been a bit of net code. But that was really unfortunate, really. But I have to say, if you are a back marker and you are having people catching you up, you want to be on the inside, then go onto the apron. Otherwise, go onto the very, very outside because it's just causing a little bit too much of a mess there.
A slight misjudgment there from the 34, I think it was, and straight into the wall. I'm afraid there for everybody. In the end, it was Daniel Valk who made the initial contact. Meanwhile, everybody's in the pit lane here. Sean Campbell not taking tyres this time, going to be out first. Fisher second, then it's going to be Havey and Fitzpatrick following on from that. Those 4 not taking tyres. Everybody else is going to take at least 2 by the looks of things, apart from Kevin Stam, who's managed to find himself into 5th place. I think Olivia Hayward might have taken 2 there with only 11 seconds of pit stops, but Dean Timms has certainly taken tyres there. Then it's Dion Neuveld, Brody Maynard and Ben Smith rounding out your top 10. We have 15 cars on the lead lap right now, but just look at some of the repair times a little bit further down here. There may be some quite long ones for some of these guys, although the front of the race, for once, doesn't look too much different to before the caution came out. We've seen the front of the race change multiple times due to these, but this time around, it's not. And it's Campbell and Fisher on the front row for the second time in a row.
Yeah, I think Matthew Heatrick, who's currently sat in 11th place, and we saw him obviously at the front end of the order before the caution, has taken fuel and 4 tyres, I would argue, because he was in for 5 seconds longer than Ben Smith, who was ahead of him. He was in for 10 seconds longer than Brody Maynard, and in for an awful lot longer, about 12 seconds longer than the likes of Sean Campbell. So, yeah, there are plenty of different strategies out there now, which makes it hard for us as commentators to keep up with you, and doesn't it? It makes it hard for the spectator as well to keep up with. But what's basically going to happen is we're just going to have to reassess everything when we get to 5 laps to go, and we see that everybody's on enough fuel to the end and enough tyres to the end, and see how we get on.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we might, as the pace, the lights on the top of the pace car go out at the moment. I feel like we have had a couple of retirements as well. I think Daniel Valk has called it a day after that. Marcellus Bruning likewise, and Jamie Jessica Martin might have also called things a day just there. Everybody, so we might well have seen 3 retirements from that one caution, and now 4 on the overall race. So a shame to see, but hopefully they will bounce back in 1 week's time at Las Vegas. So we're going to hit the halfway mark at the end of this lap here. 4th caution of the day. We had an average of 1 caution per 10 laps in the pre-qualifying race a week ago. We're continuing on in that vein of form at the moment, but hopefully we will see a bit more green flag running and a little bit more maybe single file running, so that people can kind of get up to speed and get some laps ticked off here, because yeah, we're going through a bit slowly at the moment because of all the cautions, but it's going to keep things very close and very exciting to the end.
Yeah, so as the pace car lights come off, it will be Campbell and Fisher, like you mentioned before, Ewan, to lead us away. And Campbell's starting to get used to running at the front order. Even if he didn't qualify there, he's going to be very happy with how his race has turned out in the end. Well, so far, we're only halfway through, of course, like you also mentioned earlier. So fingers crossed. It actually looked like it was about to get pretty spicy as well, with the high line coming back into play and drivers trying to be a little bit more strategic. Even Campbell potentially trying to fend off some of the other attacks as well. Hopefully we get that sort of spice without the kick in the back teeth as well that we had with the caution period. So as the lights are about to go out, Campbell is not really running away with it. Fisher actually gets a really good start. Havey is solidly in 3rd place. I don't think Fitzpatrick really got the run that they were hoping for either. But as Fisher tries to push around the outside, Campbell is still going to have that lead of this race. But again, we're potentially seeing everybody essentially, or 95% of people, trying to go for that inside line, trying to get into the rhythm of the race again without causing too many issues. But at the moment, Fisher doesn't really fancy it. And even though they're losing out on positions, already slipped down to 4th, they're still on that high line.
Yeah, green flag racing once more, and Sean Campbell taking the lead. Jonathan Havey just behind as well. Then it's Fitzpatrick, Hayward, Fisher, the top 5. Not quite all of them on the inside line. There's still a little bit of motivation from those a little bit further down to get something going here. 4 of them at the moment on the outside, but how quickly do they really want to duck back into the inside and just take the safer option? We'll see here, but it does look like they're pretty motivated to stay up there at the moment and try and get something working right now. But this is exactly what happens. You see the car lengths opening up at the moment between Hayward and the battling pair of Fisher and Neufeld right now. This is what happens. The 2 battle, and then they fall back, and then gaps can open up. This is going to be especially apparent next week at Las Vegas, and then the week after at Charlotte. If you see people battling side by side, you could see some groups getting away and staying away. It's quite difficult to stay away at Daytona because of the super speedway and the nature of it. But at circuits like those two, just watch out for it as we look behind at Havey. And those on the outside line are getting somewhere. We go over the line once more, and Dean Timms is leading the line, and he's leading them to a bit of success right now.
Yeah, I don't know if there's a little bit of pushing to help along with it, because obviously that could potentially get a little bit of a slingshot and a little bit of overspeed pass forward through the line. But doing quite well as Campbell actually moves out to the outer rim. And don't know if that's, as I said, a little bit of strategy, trying to fend off, maybe trying to almost be defensive driving. But it's quite unusual considering we have seen the faster line be the inside for the majority of this race. And look at that, he already goes back down. So he was just trying to fend off the number 46 of Dean Timms, make sure you put him in his place, essentially. It's defensive driving in NASCAR, isn't it, I suppose? It's quite aggressive and potentially could be a little bit risky, because as soon as he comes down back onto the inside line, if he doesn't judge it quite right, we could see another caution period, and we've already seen one big crash at the right of the front of the field for a similar thing.
Yeah, absolutely. There really is an art to leading at a super speedway, and Campbell, once you get into the rhythm of doing this, like Sean Campbell is trying to do right now, it can actually be very, very difficult to overhaul. But that doesn't kind of understate how difficult it actually is to swap sides, like Campbell is doing right now. Is he going to do it again here? See the outside line progressing, and some would have dipped to the outside line there just to stall it out. But what that would have done would have allowed Havey to get his nose alongside, and then Campbell will be stuck on the outside line, not in the lead, as we see. Is that Muller again? 5 laps down now. It is Loris Muller in the Chevrolet. Unfortunately, having problems once more on the apron at the moment. Thankfully, only on the apron. but hopefully doesn't cause a caution. As we see, dipping below the apron. Meanwhile as well, Havey. Now this is the danger of having someone below the apron, is that what if you do that for a split second in this main group, and some of these guys in the pack won't have even seen that, because it's so packed in. You'd be surprised how little you can see out of these NASCARs. You really don't have much peripheral vision, and when you're in a pack like this anyway, in any car, you're going to struggle to see what's happening. Thankfully, Muller has been able to get out of the way and back down into pit lane, which is certainly a good thing. So we stay green flag racing, and Campbell stays in control of these two lines right now. Staying on the inside line, no need to protect the outside just yet.
Lawrence Muller actually may well be the first driver we have on double-figure pit stop soon. He's on 7 at the moment. Obviously, we don't want anybody to get to double figures, but it would be a momentous occasion, shall we say. A lot more than a lot of the cars around him, unfortunately. And he was running with a very damaged car, so I think he just chose not to come in, even though he probably should have done. That's a big move to the outside. Who is that by? And Campbell's trying to fend it off. Is it Fitzpatrick? I think it was the number 7 of Fitzpatrick with a very determined move to the outside ahead of Dean Timms. And a little bit of, well, it ended up being brilliant because it was right perfectly timed. But it could have been a little bit hit and miss, quite literally hit, but quite literally miss in the end against Timms. And looks like they're outside, that Ewan, they're trying, they're pushing, they're going for it. Now Campbell came across to try and fend it off. It hasn't quite worked, it delayed them, but only for about a corner.
Yeah, Fitzpatrick saw potential there, and she's taken the opportunity, by the looks of things, to lead the outside line now, and it's doing a little bit better now with an extra car. Campbell is driving so well, though. He's protecting both of these lines. It's making everybody a bit nervous, by the looks of things, but he's protecting both lines so well, and you can see what effect that's having. My goodness, the outside line's steaming, and now we see people switching to the inside line, trying to get involved, and this is going to be the end of the outside, by the looks of things, because those two who weren't able to get in, Wills and Smith, are going to be hung out to dry here. So it looks like Campbell still taking the lead. Fitzpatrick and Timms all too happy to follow him back down to the inside line. Sean Campbell continues to lead at Daytona. This is great driving. We haven't seen this. We didn't see this in the pre-qualifying. We haven't seen this yet in this race. But somebody controlling both lines at one time takes a lot of skill, and it takes a lot of skill from the spotter as well, and just a lot of awareness from the driver. Campbell has done that exceptionally so far, and he's not caused a complete catastrophe while doing it as well. So great driving from him, and he is good value for this lead right now.
I would question potentially you, and is it the best thing to be doing for this mid-race, though? A lot of drivers have a lot of overspeed. We've seen that, and I know he's defending, and he's doing it fantastically. Realistically, you only need to lead one lap of this race to take the checkered flag and the victory. And Campbell really epitomised that last time in the pre-qualifying event. I feel like maybe, being overtaken at this point, there's still a lot of opportunity. There's 30 laps to try and come back at it. Could he potentially just dive into second, third, and save some fuel, save some tyres maybe, get that slipstream to launch a late attack? Because at the moment, he's the man with the target on his back, and the way he's driving, a lot of people will be hoping to be the one to take him down.
Yeah, absolutely. It's difficult, though, in a single file situation like this, because even if Fitzpatrick decides that the outside line might be a good shout here, she's got to rely on Timms behind to try to follow, basically, and kind of form up on the outside line, which might not happen, and then the 7 could get shuffled right the way back. So there's always a bit of risk involved with that. The top 6 did get away. Did have a few car lengths, but they managed to get organised and single file in the background, and so now we have 11 for the lead. Ben Smith looks like he's actually been detached. He's left out on his own. He's struggling for air. It's like watching someone drown out there at the moment, unfortunately, for him. It's 12th position, and he's a long way back. He's not getting back on his own there. He's going to have to fall in with another group. Maybe Hayward might be able to help him a little bit further down. Ronnie Hayward is a few seconds down on all of these guys. Excuse me, Olivia Hayward, I should say, a little bit further down at the moment, and might be able to get together a little bit and at least keep a little bit of pace so they can stay on the lead lap at the very least. But you can see on the outside line, people getting restless a little bit further down. I think it's Fisher in the 93 on the outside line, but we're about to see if you get no help, you will be going nowhere, and Thomas Fisher's about to learn that the hard way.
Yeah, Fisher on the outside, and Heat Trick with new tyres, we believe, going along the inside and a full tank of fuel. So Heatrick going for the longer run here. We have had green flag racing for a substantial amount of time in comparison to the earlier sort of stages, shall we say. It's been 11 laps, only one sort of stage, shall we call it, has produced more green flag running, and fingers crossed it stays that way. But by the momentum of the 93, Fitzpatrick and Fisher and Heatrick, they're getting a little bit close for comfort, and I'm not sure their cars are quite comfortable on that high line. It looks a little bit too close for comfort in terms of how the car is swaying left and right. I don't know if it's an aggressive body language or whether the car's getting buffeted around by aerodynamics, so not entirely sure which one, but we just hope that no contact becomes of it, because at the moment this is producing a fantastic stage of the race. Campbell leading from Fitzpatrick, and there it goes! Unfortunately, we see Fisher flying into Wills in the end, who was an innocent bystander, really, and watching Fitzpatrick just sort of moving around, and not Fitzpatrick, the driver we're looking at, which has completely gone out of my head.
Well, yeah, Wills, we stay green, by the way, in this incident. Despite this incident, the 95 and the 93 getting together. Fisher and Wills, unfortunately. It was Fisher on the outside line. I was just thinking how aggressive he was being, getting very low to the cars on the inside line. You can do that, and it's not frowned upon particularly, and it will make the outside line work a lot better. And you can see, even with only 2 cars, they were starting to make headway. However, it's more risky, as we've just seen, far more risky. Fisher lost it on the outside line. As you said, Will's an innocent bystander, but got caught up in it anyway, and that is unfortunate to see. We'll hopefully get a replay of that soon, but yes, this is a risky take by going on the outside line. You have to be aggressive on those on the inside line, but that can unsettle your car. It takes the air off the rear of your car, and you can spin around very easily, as we've just seen, and it's a 2-car incident. Thankfully, though, we stay green.
It is amazing, isn't it, with how much the car moves around, and we saw that. We were sort of highlighting it with Fisher's car, how much it buffets left and right, and it won't be easy to drive at all. I mean, we haven't seen a replay, so it's difficult to say that it's a bang-on mistake, or there wasn't any contact, or there's no blame or anything like that. It's really difficult to say right now, and obviously there'll be just stewards to really decide the outcome of it. But I have to say that it always surprises me with NASCAR. A lot of people think it's just driving next to each other around a circle, but it's absolutely not. The aerodynamics can play havoc with these cars, which are really just raw machines down to the bone, aren't they? And you really do have to have a lot of skill to drive them, because they are unpredictable, and they're powerful, and they're lightweight and everything like that. And obviously you've got a lot of other drivers doing 200 plus kilometers an hour next to you. So let's have a look at Fisher. We saw a lot of movement with the car, and again, yeah, the car just lets go. I don't know if there was a potential touch there actually with Heatrick.
Slight bit. I think there was a slight touch with that car on the inside line. This is the aggression I was talking about. It's not frowned upon particularly to do this, but it is more dangerous, and this is why there could be contact, and there is here with the 46, I believe. Side to side, there it is, just enough though to unsettle the car. It sets it off course, and then he's heading towards the wall, so he's got to turn left a little bit more, and unfortunately the car can't handle it, and they both go around. Wills saves it just about, and he's actually got a lot of damage. I think he might have fallen in with a few more. Yeah, this is not the leading group, I don't think. Oh no, it is, excuse me. These are the leaders. Browning and Muller have come into a bit late. Yeah, why are there so little cars in this group? Possibly because of those two. Possibly that just went around. But I thought there were more still in the group. Either way, there are 8 left at the front of this field right now. Campbell currently leading. Fitzpatrick second. Timms, Heatrick and Havey the top 5. That's Bruno, Rain and Neusveld rounding out the top 8. And the 8 in contention for this race win with 25 to go. These cars aren't going to be able to make it without a green flag pit stop if we go green right till the end. So that could provide the next interesting moment, unless we see anybody deciding to go for the outside line. It looks like Timms would like to have a go at making the outside line work.
Well, Timms has been quite keen and quite proactive on the outside line all race long, actually. It seems to be a little bit of a strategy of his, but obviously now, if he can orchestrate a breakaway with the top 2, then he's not going to be doing anything to risk that. What we'll say is Heatrick, I mentioned earlier, had the longest pit stop last time they all came in. I think took tyres and probably brimmed the tank worth of fuel. So he might be able to go that extra lap or so, which could be crucial because obviously he'll only have to refuel for one less lap than everybody else, which could save him potentially a couple of tenths or a couple of seconds. We're not entirely sure how long it takes for these drivers to fuel up with the difference of a couple of litres. But it could still be crucial. It could jump in maybe 1 or 2 positions. And then all of a sudden you're in contention for a race victory. All 8 of these, you would argue, are in contention with only 23 laps to go. But there's those little details in NASCAR that can really make a massive difference come the end of the race.
Yep, these fine margins do make a big difference. As we look at the leaders making their way out of 2. 8 left at the front of this field. We still have 15 on the lead lap, but that group that we did get shown a little bit of time ago, all battling over 11th, currently being headed by Stam. They're all running quite far back compared to the rest. Although there are 6 of them in that train, or there's about to be anyway, because Fisher is about to fall in with them as well. Yeah, we'll see about that. They're going to lose time at a little bit slower of a rate than you would if you were running on your own, for example. But they are still going to be losing time to these 8 out front. And with 22 to go, we've got to be thinking about pit stops before the next 10 laps or so. But they will want to run these tanks dry, really, before they want to come in. They'll arguably be hoping that there is a caution, not involving them, that comes out before they have to come in. That might not happen, of course, but they're going to hope that it does, so that they don't have to come down pit lane on the green flag. Not only does it cost you a lot of time, but it's very difficult to do as well, because these cars are very heavy. They have got better brakes than they used to have, but they're still not great.
I was going to say, an experienced iRacing NASCAR driver will potentially have gotten used to the previous brake system, and now all of a sudden you give them some new ones, and they brake a little bit too hard, the rear end gets a little bit squirrely, they lock up, there could be all manner of problems that they could face. And like you mentioned, we've only ever done it under pace car conditions so far in this series with the pre-qualifying, and this is of course round 1. So if they have to do it under green flag, they'll be going in an awful lot quicker than they did before, and the car generally gets unsettled even when you come off a corner, let alone when you go onto the apron. So yeah, that might actually catch a few drivers out. Hopefully they've done some practice pit stops. You mentioned obviously the other pack, shall we say, that is forming quite far behind all these drivers, currently led by Kevin Stam, which is the fight for the top 10 essentially, led by Kevin Stam. And it goes to show that if Kevin Stam is leading it, he's got quite a lot of damage apparently, we've been told by Gerard Wareham in the YouTube chat, and the fact that he has actually got a restricted top speed because of it, because of the aerodynamics. He hasn't been able to actually get his top speed, so the fact that he's leading that pack shows how damaged probably the rest of the cars are. Little bit of something interesting to sort of think about. Obviously we're going to focus on the front lot, but if you're interested in that sort of pack, well, there you go, there's a little update on it.
Yeah, there we are. Brady Maynard also found a friend here by the looks of things. Might be teammates, these two. Looks like they're in a very almost identical livery, actually. So there we are. He's doing Neuveld as we see. Fitzpatrick going to the lead. Campbell pulls out to the side after fiercely holding on to that lead, deciding that he doesn't want it anymore. And Swartz Fitzpatrick takes the lead in the 7. Now, I wonder if this is a field game, because Sean Campbell has been leading this race for quite a long time now. He's been towing this field along. If he does it for too much longer, he's going to have to come in, and he's going to have absolutely no friends when he comes in. So he wants to save that little bit of fuel so that he can make it to the lap that everybody else can make it to, and he can come in with them. But he can't do that leading the field. So he's gone to the back, and although it looks weird, he's done it, and it's probably sensible, even though it looks a bit strange, as I say.
Yeah, well, this is what I was questioning earlier on, really, with how aggressive Campbell was being in the defence of his lead. It's not the end of the world if you drop behind, because there are plenty of things that you can do from second and third, which can actually mean you are in the lead at the end of the race. And maybe Campbell is feeling that a little bit. Maybe his spotter's on board and they're doing some calculations and they don't think that they can quite pit on the same lap that everybody else can. And then you're in a bit of a problem because, as you said, you've got no friends and you haven't got that slipstream to help you with. And even though you may rejoin them after a lap, you've been slow for that lap sort of thing. So he would go from first probably down to 8th anyway. So he's probably done a good job. Now, what can Fitzpatrick do as she leads the way? It's going to be a new type of pressure. Obviously, clear road, when you've got a car ahead of you, all you have to do is focus on following that car. And I'm not saying it's easy, I'm just saying that there's a target. When there's clear air ahead of you, all of a sudden your brain starts doing weird things and thinking about the specific line that you should be taking and whether you're doing it right and what everybody else doing is behind, and it starts to get a little bit scary. That's from my experience leading a race anyway. This is that battle on that pack. There's a little bit further down. This top 10 fight, basically. Maynard leading them in the 8. In fact, that's not Maynard leading them, actually. This pack is actually coming up to lap a few drivers.
Well, oh my goodness, this is getting close. One of those cars is Maynard, of course, who joined up with a teammate here. But this group is actually going quicker than the leading 8. So at the moment, those guys at front are so concerned about fuel and they're so concerned about each other that this group, which is actually now larger than the leading group, because of the extra 2 they've just gained, it was actually 10 strong a few moments ago. They've actually got within 20 seconds now. Yeah, this is all. That's the relative. You can see that Wareham is currently at the front. There's Maynard, Stam, and then Smith. As we've got pit stops, we have pit stops. Fitzpatrick, the leader, is in. There's Havey, Neuveld, and Campbell. So this group up front has been split into 2. And we've got pit stops after not even 25 laps in this stint, so maybe a little bit early. But these 4 may have communicated that they wanted to come in together.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. And as I said, I expected the entire group to come in. I expected one of them to commit and then the rest of them to react. But that actually might be what happened. The driver in the middle of the pack went in. Obviously, no one in front of them can react, but everybody behind can react. So that's going to be very interesting to see how they all come off. This is number 24, Bruno, leading now the way. Rain behind Timms and Heatrick. Timms and Heatrick have been right at the front of this for the majority of the race, but now they come in. Heatrick and Timms both come into the pit lane. So there is now a complete split of all these cars as Bruno and Rain lead the way. Now, they've had 5 pit stops, Bruno and Rain. Their last pit stop was on lap 38. Which is the same as Ben Smith, who I think has just come in the pits.
Yeah, well, it's the same as everybody's really, I think, here. So these 2 are going to have to come in this lap, surely. But it'd be very interesting to see where the likes of Campbell, Havey, Fitzpatrick, Neuveld come out in relation to Heatrick and Timms. Those 2 very close at the moment. Are they going to be very close? Because those 2 duos that they've split themselves into now were running side by side earlier, which is not a great idea. Timms also has had a much shorter pit stop there than everybody, well, not everybody else, but certainly than Heatrick, who's dropping through the field. These 2 leaders are now in, as we expected to see. But where's Timms in relation? Timms has actually done a great job here on this pit stop, because these 3, Campbell, Havey, and Fitzpatrick, are only going to catch up to now. Can Timms fall in with these guys? Has he got the pace to just clip on with these, or is he going to get left behind? And are we going to have 3 for the lead? There they go. And they might be a little bit too quick for the 46. I think they are. Oh, dearie me. The 26, 43, and 7 now for the lead. Neuveld and Heatrick's pit stops were a little bit longer. And so I think they might have taken tyres, quite possibly. Or at least, well, no, Neuveld's pit stop wasn't that long. But he's still come out with Heatrick here in this one. And it looks like Timms is going to have to fall in with those guys as well. Rain and Bruno are probably going to have to fall in with them as well. Let's see where they come out, though, because they're making their way out of the pits right now with 14 to go. Where is the 63? I can see them just in the distance there. Let's not forget those couple of laps they saved will allow them to not take it stationary in the pit lane, so it might help them a bit. Will Bruno be able to get in with those 3 who are coming up steaming to him at the moment? I think he might be able to, actually. Yeah, Bruno looks like he will be second, and Rain has stolen a march on everybody here. He's not going to keep this, because look at them behind. They're all forming up nicely, and we're going to have 5 for the lead, but he's had a shorter pit stop than everybody else, and he's done very well in this pit stop cycle.
Yeah, I think a few drivers have worked together, haven't they? Specifically, Rain and Bruno as teammates. They've worked together to save at least one of their drivers some fuel. Campbell and Havey and Fitzpatrick all working absolute steam train to try and gun them down, but it's not going to be easy. Put it that way. Although, by the looks of it, is that Rain who's going a little bit slowly, actually. And but Bruno's right on the back of these drivers now. I was slightly questioning Dean Timms, to be honest, that he's going very slowly. I expected him to be slightly slower, but not that much slower. by the looks of it, the number 63 of Rain is actually going to be at a similar pace to Dean Timms, and I know there's a little bit of slipstream,
Oh, he's
but
in again.
that's why Rain is going into the pits, and I was curious as to why he was going so much slower. Anyway, we have Campbell, Havey, Fitzpatrick, and Bruno all for the lead.
Yep, we do indeed. 4 for the lead in this race at Daytona. 12 to go under the lights in Florida. Our first round of the WSL NASCAR EU Series here, and it's going to be between these 4. You'd have to say those 2 on the inside line are lapped cars. Rain, by the way, likely had it was speeding in the pit lane, likely. So that's why he had to come in. But now they've made their way through on those 2. The 4 for the lead might well switch down to the inside line again. So this is where things get interesting. It's not a very big group anymore at all because of the amount of green flag running we've had in the second half of this race, because of the pit stops that have split this field apart now, split it absolutely always, you can imagine. And so it's going to be difficult to get through on Campbell. We've already seen how good Campbell is at defending a lead. So just how physical is it going to get?
Well, that's the thing, isn't it? Everybody knows that Campbell has been defending so well in this race. They're going to have to go on the outside line to try and launch an attack. We know he can defend the outside as well as he can defend the inside as well. So realistically, Havey, Fitzpatrick and Bruno probably need to be thinking about working together more than anything, just to try and take down Campbell, who, as I mentioned before, has a bit of a target on his back now, as he has done so well. Those back markers have latched themselves onto the back of this train. Now they shouldn't, hopefully, get anywhere near any of this action, because obviously they are not fighting for a race lead. They're fighting amongst each other, which, they had their own race. That's all fair game. But if they start seeing drivers ahead of them start moving out and trying to make moves, let's just hope they don't try and follow them and get in the way a little bit. But at the moment, it does look like a 6-way battle, which is still quite entertaining. So it does look good as a spectacle, Ewan.
It does. It's putting distance into those behind. The battle for 5th is between 3 drivers at the moment. Those it's battling over 8th at the moment are running a little bit quicker right now by the looks of things. Here they are, the 3 of them. They actually had 5, which is why they were catching a moment ago, but they might not do it with quite a rate anymore. A nearly 24-second margin, though, even if they do get formed up here, these 5. I don't know what those 2 are doing, running side by side a little bit further down. To be honest, they could have easily formed up there and gone a little bit quicker themselves. But these 6 right now are too far in front of everybody else at this stage to really get overtaken by anybody else. It would really have to be a quite monumental game of cat and mouse to allow anybody else into this fight, or indeed a caution, which is equally unlikely at this stage, but you can never write it off.
You can't, actually, and they are fighting, so at least they're enjoying themselves back there, and they are obviously fighting for points, of course. This is a championship, and even though they're not fighting for a race win, there is still pride and points to be had. For the end of the season, we are under caution by the end of this race, not the end of this season, obviously. We are in the 5th caution, and I'm not 100% sure why. I haven't seen any massive big fallings off the track or anything like that from any drivers, but we are under caution. That's going to bunch everybody back up. It's going to allow a lucky dog to try and unlap themselves. And I'm just wondering whether we've done this. Brody Maynard here
was the cause of the caution yet. So, and I have a feeling that orange and white car might have something to do with it as well. Let's see. Maynard is at the front of this group, being pushed. Now, netcode could be involved here. Well, not netcode, but blinking could be involved. It's coming through 1 and 2, and out of 1 and 2. Let's see what happens anyway. Is there going to be a bit of a push through the corner? Because this can cause it. But it does actually look like he might have. As I said, I have a feeling it might have been to do with this orange and white car just in front, since it's got no nose. But that doesn't mean it's got no nose as of a few seconds ago. It could have got that a while ago. So who knows at this stage? We are scouring the circuit at the moment for clues. It could be this car, the 81. Excuse me. Let's see if it is involved in any way. It is. Gets tipped around into the outside wall on the back straight. And, we've got our final caution of the race. It was tipped around 96, I think that possibly was. It's one of those unlucky things. Coming off the corner this time, just getting the cars connected in a wrong way. And around he went. So, pit stop repair is going to have to be made. But no pit stops for anybody else, because everybody can make it to the flag.
Yeah, so that was actually a heat trick that ended up having that contact, and I suppose it's going to cause a little bit of not concern, controversial, shall we say, because now heat trick's actually joined back up with the rest of the field. There he is. He's at the back, and all of a sudden, that four-way battle for the race lead, heat trick is now well and truly involved in potentially taking a race victory. So he's gained quite a big advantage from that contact. Now, he obviously didn't do it. I'm not saying he did it on purpose. I'm just saying that I could understand why a few of the drivers might feel like that's a little bit of a shame, shall we say. But heat trick, Timms, Maynard, all back in with a fight. So's Fisher, actually. And I have to say, it does make a grandstand finish, Ewan. It's no longer a four-way battle. I would probably argue that any of the top 8 could have potential shout at winning this.
I would argue the top 13 can, because they're all on the lead lap.
Very true,
so,
you're absolutely right on.
So, well, it's all about which way you look at it, I suppose. But yeah, 5th caution of the day. We had this amount of cautions in 50 laps, by the way, last week. But we've had a good green flag run there. In the second half of this race, we've really had a very nice green flag run. And we saw green flag pit stops as well, which I'm very glad about. But now it's time for the grandstand finish. If the gloves weren't off before, they're going to be fully off now. And they're going to be out the ring now. And we're going to be absolutely going for this. All of these guys are, and well, who knows where it's going to go. It's almost a lottery at this stage. You've got to pick your moments, you've got to pick your battles, you've got to pick the right lines, and the person that does that will be victorious. But there's no exact science to doing this at all. It's going to be a little bit of luck, a little bit of right place, right time, a little bit of skill to take this race victory here. But there's going to be 5 to go when we get back racing, and not many chances to get to the front. It's going to be exhilarating.
It absolutely is. I'm having a look at a few drivers who have made big gains at this race as well, and according to our SDK timing, which is what we use basically for the timing system and everything like that, Jonathan Havey has actually gained 17 positions off the starting off his qualifying position to be in 2nd place. Sean Campbell's gained about 11 or 12. I think it's 12 to be in the lead of this race. Dean Timms has gained 15 positions to beat up to 5th, and they're not. This sort of system isn't always 100% accurate, but it goes to show that a lot of drivers have gained a lot of positions. And like we said about an hour and a half ago, qualifying isn't everything.
Absolutely. Well, it's almost nothing.
Yeah,
in this,
essentially.
Well, it's turned out that way anyway. In this race, even Sean Campbell, who's run so well today, has qualified right outside the top 10. And yeah, it's been a very good day for him. He'll probably have led the most laps by the end of today, but will he lead the last one? That's the most important, of course, and he's got 5 laps to try and hold on to this lead. It's not the first restart he's had to do today, but they don't get any easier, I think it's safe to say. As they come out of 4 now, we're going to see the pace car coming in. We're going to have only 5 laps to go to decide who's going to win the first race of the WSL NASCAR EU Series here at Daytona. Here we go. Pace car in, 5 to go. Sean Campbell ready as we go through the tri-oval. He goes. Jonathan Havey not with a very good reaction there, but Fitzpatrick didn't have a great reaction either. And so it looks like Campbell's going to be out there with no help at all. He goes to the outside line to block Havey immediately. And Havey pulls down to the inside line as well. As we look at things, Bruno dips to the inside as well. Fitzpatrick has been shuffled back here. She won't like that one at all. Not a good restart, unfortunately, as we see the outside line starting to gain some momentum. And Bruno does not want to stay on the inside here. Back straight into 3 and 4. This is going to get very aggressive.
Campbell doing everything he absolutely could do on that restart and nailing it to a plumb. It looks like they're going to go try 3 wide. That's a recipe for disaster. And we don't want to go caution again because we want the grandstand finish. But it looks like Fisher, and I think that's it's Fisher and it's not Valk, is it? I'm not sure who that heat trick, going side by side at the top end. But at the moment, Campbell and Havey still leading the way. Fitzpatrick, those 3 trying to break away as best they can. And we'd look a little bit further down. And Timms, I believe, is in the middle of that melee that almost is 4 wide. The number 46 is Dean Timms. The number 6 is Stam with a little bit of damage on the front end. So the rest of this pack being gapped now, and it's a huge crash, and that was almost inevitable, as that is the big one, I would say. 6th caution of the race, 4 to go. We're going to have a grandstand finish here. I think we'll have 3 laps of 3 laps under caution, 1 under green, white finish.
Well, let's see what's going to happen. Are we going to get green flag racing in? Has Sean Campbell done enough? We'll wait and see if we do get a restart. But another big incident indeed. Isaac Rain was one of those really looking to get forward there, despite being one lap down, fighting for that lucky dog position if indeed a situation like this were to happen. But yeah, let's see if what happened there in a replay in a few moments' time. Because yeah, it's another big incident, I'm afraid, possibly the biggest since the first caution that we saw. That really was the biggest incident of the day, and hopefully will stay that way because it took out a lot of cars towards the end of this one. 3 to go right now. It's going to be 2 to go next time around. Are we going to get lights off at the end of that? Well, let's.
Well, we should go green, white finish, I believe, at the rules of the regs. So we should have two racing laps by the end of this one.
I'm not entirely sure what is going to happen because yes, I've not. Yeah, it's difficult to know. Not everyone does this in the same way. So yeah, we'll see how it happens. Because in my experience, iRacing doesn't do NASCAR overtime or whatever that is. Or whatever it's called at the time. So yes, we'll see if they do that this time around or what happens. But everybody, I should say nobody, taking the opportunity to pit here because there's absolutely no point. There's going to be 2 to go now. I think if the lights get turned off here, then we might have a chance because it will be 1 to go next time around. But the lights are not off at this stage, so I'm not 100% confident that we'll go back racing again. Although we've come across the line there and it hasn't changed from 3 to go, so it will be a green flag, white checker by the looks of things. So to my knowledge, there'll be 2 laps. There'll be manually 2 laps to go when we go green flag racing, and then it will be 2 laps dash for the win. So yeah, we're just gonna try and explain what is going to happen. And so so they're going to try and so it's a green white checker. To my understanding, we're going to follow the green flag. If they get to the white flag, then the next flag wins the race, be it the checker or the yellow. If they don't get to the white flag, they can try again to get to the white flag. If I don't know, I think that's what, or roughly how it's going to happen. We'll have a okay. I did get that right. Thank God for that. So yes, we're going to go back green flag racing with 2 laps to go. We're going to have unlimited attempts to get to the white flag. When we do, the next flag ends the race. There we go. Hopefully that's simple enough for everybody at home. And yeah, let's hope as well. This is the last caution of the race because we do not want to see anybody else out of this one. We've seen, for example, Dean Timms in the 46 have such a good run all day long. Fisher as well, but they're going to be well down by the end of this one because of that latest accident.
It's amazing, isn't it, how us Europeans get so stumped with the rule that is so embedded in American motorsport, isn't it? But yeah, hopefully the lights will come off on this one. And to be honest, I never really understood the full reason why the pace car is out for so long in iRacing. I get that it's an opportunity for drivers to drive around to the pit and then get back out. But I feel like they could probably get rid of one of the laps of the pace car and sort of get the flow back going. But either way, we're going to be going racing in about a minute's time, so it doesn't really matter, does it? Campbell with an opportunity here. He absolutely nailed the restart previous time round. He got a good jump. He had to wait a full lap before anybody else even got close to challenging him. And, well, as we know now, Ewan, if he does that again, that's basically half of his race done and dusted without a challenge. Havey needs to be a little bit more on it this time. Fitzpatrick needs to be right on his back bumper and his gearbox and basically be lighting up his rear diffuser as well with a little bit of a bump, I would say, down the main straight to try and at least get ahead of Havey and fend off that outside line. A few drivers not taking part anymore, unfortunately. We've had plenty of DNFs, but we're focusing on the drivers that are left now with the pace car light off and about to come in.
Certainly are. You can see a few people jockeying for position, trying to get in the right place, just in the background there. We're going to have 10 cars on the lead lap, 2 cars 1 lap down, so if there are more yellows, then they'll have more chances to get back up the order and back with a chance of winning this race. But you've got to say it's between some of these guys at the front. There's not that much time left to climb your way back through the order. We're going to have 2 to go when we go back green flag racing. The pace lights are off. The lights are off on top of the pace car, and we're ready to see it pull to the right-hand side. And the first attempt here for the green-white checker is about to get underway. Sean Campbell in control of the field on yet another restart. Our 6th caution ends, and we're back green flag racing at Daytona. 2 to go. Campbell has a good start here. He's got a good car length there, but the outside line is starting to form up well. Havey with a good run. Heatrick is pushing him well. Bruno as well. Fitzpatrick not quite giving the assistance to Campbell that he needs at this stage. I'm going to have to hope that Maynard has got a big shove as well, because Havey's coming on the outside line. It's a good run from those at the moment. Heatrick comes to second and Maynard abandons the inside as well. Bruno gets into third, and you can see Fitzpatrick abandoning the inside as well. It's falling apart for Sean Campbell here on the very penultimate lap of this race. They come into 3 and 4, and somebody has to deny Havey. Is it going to be Heatrick? He tries to bully his way to the inside line. He gets a bit of help from Bruno on the inside line there, and they're going to push themselves to the lead. White flag at Daytona. One more time, around 2.5 miles to go. Who's going to take victory? Oh, it's not going to be Heatrick. He's into the wall in a big way, I'm afraid. And Bruno's on the outside line as well. He's going to get shuffled back. Fitzpatrick takes the lead. Sean Campbell pushes forward the number 7 car at the moment. Maynard as well in 3rd position. Bruno could be out of it in 4th, just losing a couple of car lengths. Can anybody deny Fitzpatrick the win? Sean Campbell's looking every which way. He's led so many laps today, but is he going to have his heart broken right at the line here? Pushing through 3 and 4 for the final time here at the green-white checker. Not long to go. Campbell's going to have to duck out every which way he can to try and steal this one. He goes to the outside line, coming towards the triangle. Maynard's going to help him, and Campbell's going to be pushed to victory by Maynard. By the looks of things, he's going to take it just about by 0.04 of a second. Maynard second, Bruno third, and Fitzpatrick, so unfortunate after leading through the final turn. She's only going to be 4th. What an exciting finish.
Yeah, you only need to lead the last 10 metres, don't you, if that. To be honest, Campbell led an awful lot more of that throughout the entirety of this race, but it looked like the chance was gone going on to the final lap, but it wasn't to be. Campbell makes his way through and technically makes it a double victory here on Absolute Sim Racing, even if the first one was only a pre-qualifying event and a bit of a media test, shall we say. Maynard comes home in 2nd place and Bruno in 3rd, and the 3 of them line up there for a little bit of a potential photo opportunity, I imagine, under the lights here at Daytona. Great racing all round. Fitzpatrick did a brilliant job as well. A couple of drivers in the end probably felt like they should have been there but weren't quite. Heatrick is one of them who's actually being pushed around now by our race winner in the number 96 machine. There was a little bit of argy-bargy on the last lap of the race, but luckily we just got to the white flag before we saw it all fall apart for some of those other drivers, so we didn't have to go through another safety period, and we could finish the race with probably, arguably, the rightful winner, Ewan. Campbell was pretty sensational in that one.
Absolutely. He's been sensational for 2 weeks in a row now. As you mentioned, the pre-qualifying winner 1 week ago ahead of Brandon Hughes and Jonathan Havey. This time around, it's ahead of Brody Maynard and Matthew Bruno, who were 2nd and 3rd in that one. My goodness me, what a finish that was. Sean Campbell getting pushed in the end. It was really disappointing for Fitzpatrick. Imagine leading coming out the final corner and still not even finishing on the podium. That's how close it is. But she'll be back next week. There's no doubt about that. Here are the race winners. The race winners and race results, I should say. Campbell, Maynard, Bruno, Fitzpatrick, Stam, your top 5. Mark Cudmore manages to finish in 6th after not even qualifying today. Ben Smith, 7th, ahead of Jonathan Havey and Matthew Heatrick, the final car on the lead lap. Dion Neusveld didn't actually complete the right... Well, I think he did complete, but he was a lap down. Isaac Rain, 11th, ahead of Harry Wills. Olivia Hayward, 13th, ahead of Dean Timms and Thomas Fisher, rounding out your top 15. Rich Matthews and Judith Cooper rounding out those in the 17th position. Then it's Jessica Martin in 18th place. A little bit further down, also Mark Redford finishing in 19th, then Gerard Wareham, Jeff Browning, Loris Muller, Marcellus Bruning, Daniel Valk, Brandon Hughes, Artie Brushart and Dylan Kinch rounding out your 27 car grid here for today. Not all of those, you understand, making it to the end of the race. And it's no surprise, a race of attrition at Daytona. Who would have thought it? But an exciting finish as well. Let's have another look at some of the things that happened throughout the race. Yeah, here he is, Sean Campbell, the race victory there. As you say, deserving race victory, no doubt about that.
Yeah, no, he defended brilliantly. He led from the front. It's difficult to do, leading from the front in NASCAR. And even when he was tested and he ended up falling back, he had the strategy, the momentum, the patience to fight back towards the end as well. And especially on that last lap, he did really well. And his restarts, to be honest, were top draw. It's very difficult to get a car length away from anybody at Daytona, especially after a restart. And he did exactly that. And although you're inevitably going to be caught half a lap later, it still does mean that you just fend off that threat just for the time being. And when you are a little bit vulnerable, we're just going to try and wait to get a few interviews in the waiting room. We're just waiting for drivers to be brought in to the broadcast waiting room so we can have a quick chat with them. It'd be lovely to have a chat with our podium sitters, Sean Campbell, Brodie Maynard, and Matthew Bruno. But of course, they have to voluntarily do that. So, Ewan, for the time being, we're sort of waiting. It's a waiting game.
Yeah, we'll wait for them for a couple of moments' time. But just wanted to talk about that final lap, really, that we saw. Obviously, very disappointing for Heatrick as well, who ends up 9th in the end here, getting turned around on the exit of the tri-oval, coming onto the white flag lap there. But after that, there were 4 for the lead. It was very clean. It would be very easy for Campbell to just try and turn Fitzpatrick out the way using brute force in that one. Fortunately, he didn't do that, and he took the lead cleanly. It was a good battle between those 4 in the final lap there, and it was good to see it end that way.
Yeah, absolutely. I think in fact, we may well see. Is this a replay? Yeah. So we can see number 96 in the lead of this race, Heatrick, and now. Who's the driver behind him? Is that Bruno, who unfortunately makes the tap up his rear end? And obviously, I think we see Fisher flying around as well. I think that was Fisher anyway. So, yeah, it is a shame. And we thought there was a potential that Sean Campbell would do the same thing here. And, in fact, there's plenty of pushing. Look at the bump draft that he's giving him. And you can see that Toyota rear end squiggling around under load, I should say, from Sean Campbell's car. But luckily they kept it all clean through the corners, because realistically that would have been a pretty poor way to win it for Campbell, because after he'd done so well, the stewards would have had something to say about it as well, I'm sure.
Absolutely. You see that duck to the outside line there. It might not have been enough, but if you look at behind it, there he is, Maynard, pushing him there, realising that actually going with the momentum and Campbell there on the outside line might have given him a better finishing position. I think Maynard might have accepted that he wasn't going to win, but second was the best possible result from there, and going with Campbell was probably the best way of doing that. That's exactly what happened, and it's very unfortunate for Fitzpatrick to end up down in 4th place. What it does do, though, is set up a very exciting championship indeed. As I mentioned, we'll be back in 1 week's time with the race at Las Vegas. Here are your race results again. 40 points will go to Sean Campbell, 38 to Maynard, and then decrease 1 down a position for all of the others. We've got a very exciting championship on our hands heading up over the next 8 weeks. All culminating, of course, with another super speedway at Talladega on the 2nd of June. It's very much worth looking forward to.
It absolutely is, yeah. I think, unfortunately, we don't have any drivers coming in for a chat. We'll give them a brief next time, a media brief before the next race, so we can make sure we come prepared for interviews afterwards. But, yeah, it's been a brilliant night, Ewan. Thank you very much for jumping in. I know DJ Clark's going to be back in, but it's been an absolute pleasure commentating with you. It's certainly been a pleasure to commentate with you as well, Jack. It's been wonderful. And if I'm needed, you'll be hearing from me again. But if not, of course, you'll be hearing the wonderful tones of DJ Clark on this series in the future, and we look forward to that. We look forward to your company in a couple of weeks' time, in 1 week's time, for that race at Las Vegas. It should be a good one, but don't go anywhere here at Absolute Sim Racing. In just about 2 hours' time, just over 2 hours' time, we'll be going live with the WSL NASCAR Series US version of this championship. We're going to see 80 more laps of fantastic racing, so make sure you join us for that. A big thank you to SIM3D and Go for the Gap for powering this series, and Absolute Sim Racing, of course, for the broadcast here tonight. David Christie has been behind the cameras. I've been Ewan O'Leary alongside Jack Oliphant here tonight, and until we see you again in 1 week's time at Las Vegas, it's goodbye for now.